the mafia.
Yeah.
Except
But
for
they were good,
Mario.
though.
Mario was a real person. In fact, they were classmates.
Right.
Yeah, and actually a lot of the cultural mores that I talk about in the book came from his book, which he wrote in Italian, and it's called Come eravamo a Mola. And he wrote this book for the young people of Mola so that they would know what it was like for their grandparents and great-grandparents. So
that's
I
wonderful.
used that. And again, that was another book that I found that my father had in that attic.
Oh, he did.
He had
he
that
kept
book.
that
Yes.
from his friend.
Yes.
That's so
Yes.
interesting. Now, so he gets this position in the military police, I guess, right? And
well,
he's,
they were called the Carabinieri Reali. They were the Royal
The Royal.
Yes.
Okay.
And that was considered a very elite group.
Yes.
Yeah. They were better trained and better educated.
And then he even went further when the commander said, does anybody know how to type here? And he raises his hand, and meanwhile he didn't know how to type at all. He was chosen, and he taught himself, and he was doing a great job in that office. And then the Germans came, right? They invaded this particular station, this building.
Well, what happened was, by that time, he had been transferred from Yugoslavia back to Milan. And that was a fluke, because he was supposed to have been transferred to Torino. At the last minute, they changed his order. He was transferred to Milan. When he gets to Milan, he sees Milan has been bombarded by the British.
Yeah.
And so he does not, he was not expecting this. So this was a little bit of a shock to him. And he was assigned to a caserma in Milan. And now, once the armistice was signed, the Italian government signed an armistice with the Allies in '43. At that point, the Germans decided that this was the time to invade, and they did invade, coming through the Brenner Pass and occupying town after town in northern Italy. And of course, they occupied Milan. At that point, all the soldiers in Italy were asked to report to the Grand Command. They called it the Grand. It was the German headquarters, and for reassignment. Now, what that reassignment meant is anybody's guess. Reassignment could have been to a concentration camp, to a work camp, to the Russian front. Could have been anywhere. So the chances are that you would never come back. So many Italian soldiers just ran for their lives, and they ran to the mountains. Some of them joined the partisans, who were becoming very powerful at that time. And my father, as the story goes, his police station in Milan had already been occupied by the Germans. He jumped out of the second floor window and ran for his life. And he was actually hidden in a lumberyard. That's true. What I wrote in the book, that is true. They hid him in the lumberyard, and later on he was put in touch with partisan work who were very active in that area, and they in turn put him in touch with a family who took them in.
The Lorenzo family?
The
Di Lorenzo, right. And what I found so fascinating about that, I mean, they were lovely to him. They took him in, and they fed him with what little food they had, and they put him in their attic. But he really stayed there a long time without ever coming out, because he was so afraid that he would be caught, because where the Di Lorenzos lived was not very far from where his caserna was, right? Is that what? Well, they thought that he could be picked up. So
he could have easily have been picked up, but they were in Seregno, which was a suburb of Milan. I went to visit Seregno, was it 2 years ago I went to visit.
Really?
I wasn't able to locate the family. I know that they live in the area. I just didn't have the right address. I would have loved to have contacted them. But at any rate, my father did keep in touch with them for the rest of his life. They always wrote back and forth. They even saw each other. They went to visit each other. So I knew that my father was very close to them even after the war.
That's amazing.
That's what happened. But actually, the Italian people hid these soldiers that were on the run. They hid Allied soldiers that fell in the wrong place. They hid Jews. They really I have to say, for all of the suffering that they went through, they really did an astounding job of putting their life on the line.
They took so many risks.
Yeah, they would have been shot.
Such a big risk, and they knew the risk, and yet they still did this for him, who was a stranger. It's not as if he was related to someone that they knew, and they grew to love him like a member of their family. He got very close with them. I thought that was a beautiful part of the story. I mean, it must have been excruciating to be stuck in that attic for as long as he did. And then I guess a little bit after a year, he decided, okay, I could venture out a little. And that's when he went to visit the artist, right?
Yeah, he was introduced to an artist who was actually, he's a real person. He was not made up. But Luca Crippa, who became very well known in that part of Italy. In fact, when he died not too long ago, but he left Seregno a legacy of, I don't know how many thousands of prints of his sketches and drawings.
Wow.
And so he had quite a career after the war. But at that time, they were the same age. They were both 20, they were both born in 21. And so they really connected. And I think that was how my father started to get involved with the painting and the drawing and all of that.
And he had the artistic ability, and now you have artistic ability. You're a photographer.
I cannot deny the genes. But I have to tell you something else. A lot of the photographs that I found, when I look at them now, I could see that they're really selfies, because you could see from the angle he must have propped the camera on the floor because of the way that, you could see that he propped it, and then he was taking shots of himself, and a lot of those pictures are in the book. But also, again, you look at things with different eye when you're looking at them for research.
Right.
So one of the things that I noticed in one of his pictures, which is not in the book, but I still have it at home, one of the pictures, he's going to the church, a photograph of him going to the church for the wedding in '47. And what do I see on the wall? I never noticed this before, but I see the communist, the sickle. Yeah, and so I said, oh, that makes sense, because communists were very powerful in Italy right after the war. And when the elections came for what kind of government Italy would have, they could have easily have won. Of course, they didn't win, but they were very powerful.
Yeah, it was close.
Yeah, it made so much sense to me that way. The other thing that I noticed, in one of the earlier pictures he's walking down the street in Ljubljana, because he was stationed in Ljubljana. Actually, he was stationed right outside of Ljubljana in a small town called Dubrova. But they went to Ljubljana quite a bit because that was a large city, and it was very, very close by. And he's walking down the street, and I noticed that he had, in the picture, I noticed for the first time he has a black armband and a black tie. So when I first looked at it, I said, is that a fascist thing? And then when I looked at it some more, I said, no, that's because he was in mourning for his brother. His brother had just died. My uncle Simone died.
And they wore that to show that they were in mourning.
Yes,
that's so
a sign of symbol
like the women would wear black, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was the black tie and the black armband was a symbol of mourning. Wow. So that made sense to me. The other thing was, when I look at the pictures, he looks much older. But when I look at the dates, he was 19 years old.
Yeah.
He was very young.
Even just on the cover of the book, he looks older than his years. We're almost out of time. I just wanted to bring up how wonderful it kind of comes to fruition that they do get married and they do come to New York. And what I thought was so fascinating was that they didn't go to Brooklyn where the other Mola immigrants were, because he wanted to do something new. They went to Long Island City.
That's right.
And I thought that really was a gutsy decision for him to do that. And the book is kind of ended with, your mom she doesn't speak English, and she's lonely, and she's raising kids, and she's just kind of displaced.
Yes,
and
it's very difficult for
Yet
her.
I say, I look at you now and all the success that you've had, that they obviously, assimilated and made a great life for you and for their children and grandchildren.
Yes.
So it's an amazing story.
Well, thank you.
I loved reading it. I hope everybody reads this book.
Thank you very much.
It's entertaining, it's poignant, and it's really beautiful. So thank you for
so
being
much.
here.
And again, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's so great. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm Pam Parker, and you're watching PATV.